Okay, we're going to fade out for now.
I may appear a little nervous today. This is the first time that my family has been here to listen to me speak. And believe it or not, 44 years of my Air Force career is represented out here in the audience, so that makes me a little nervous. But thank you very much for coming. My name is Ron Dandeneau. I was raised in Berlin, New Hampshire, about 60 miles from the Canadian border. And that is where I learned how to speak French. First, in the home, we spoke French in my home, that was the first language. And then at school, Académie St. Regis Academy. We went to school a half a day in French and a half a day in English. And that is how, some 20 years later, I ended up asking to be a Rustic. Most of the translators in the Rustic organization came from the same type of background. A New England, French, Canadian type background. Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, where their parents or grandparents had immigrated down from Canada and the French language was still spoken in the home. However, there were some exceptions. Sergeant Chang obviously was not from New Hampshire, Maine, or Vermont. Sergeant Manuel was not. Some of the translators had learned the French from young ladies that they met, dated, and then married who became their spouses. When I got to thinking about that, learned the French from a pretty French girl, learned it from a nun with a ruler. I think they got the better deal than I did. Okay. This is advertising the book, which is not coming out till next month, which will detail everything about the Rustic operation in Cambodia. I have some order forms on the desk if you care to order it from the Smithsonian, or you can also order it from the website from, I'll get that for you, but it's also in the book. It will not come out till next month. It is being published as we speak. My friend John Ware keeps bringing me books about Vietnam and Cambodia, and he keeps saying, there's nothing in here about the Rustics. There's nothing in here. There isn't anything in there because it was top secret, ladies and gentlemen. And the operation was directed right from here on Pennsylvania. So that is why, until the book is published next month, you will not read anything in any history book about the Rustic operation in Cambodia. Okay, taking back a little bit, that's 1970, 1973. That was the duration of the Rustic operation. But I'll use myself as an example to take you to that point. In 1969, as the handout says, I was on recruiting duty in New Haven, Connecticut. My tour was about to finish in December, and I was selected to be a French interrogator of prisoners in Vietnam. I was supposed to go to Tan Son Nhut Air Base, stopping en route at Aberdeen, Maryland for training on how to interrogate prisoners. I made arrangements to move my family here to Alexandria, Virginia, and we were just getting ready to move out when I was told your assignment is canceled. So, having made all the arrangements to move and everything, I frantically called the personnel center and said, where are you going to send me now? If you're going to send me someplace else, I have to make other plans, other arrangements. And the young lady in Texas says, I don't know where in Southeast Asia you're going, but you're going to Southeast Asia. I said, fair enough. That meant that I didn't have to change my plans. A couple of days later, she called, and I was going to the same installation, still going to Tan Son Nhut Air Base, but this time as a traffic management transportation specialist. And here's Tan Son Nhut right here, and where we would end up eventually at that moment. Being in that transportation organization was quite exciting enough. The 377 Transportation Squadron was comprised of people that many of you here know. Mr. Bob Wiley, in the Vehicle Division on the Air Staff today, was in that organization, along with Day Sergeant Sandin, which some of you out here know. Kurt Harrington, the gentleman that's been on the Air Staff in Germany right now and returning to the Air Staff next month. We were all at Tan Son Nhut together. The 377 Transportation Squadron won the Air Force Outstanding Transportation Squadron of the Year. The group won the Air Force Outstanding Unit Award. The group won the Presidential Unit Citation. So being at Tan Son Nhut in the Transportation Squadron was not a bad deal. we did have some free time. I apologize for the quality of the slide, but this is Saigon. Tan Son Nhut being right outside of Saigon, we did periodically have some time to go down into the city. And as you know, Saigon was called the Pearl of the Orient. I was a lot older. And you can't see this one too well, but my friend Sergeant Sandlin is in the same picture because we were together. At the same time that I was doing this transportation job at Tan Son Nhut Air Base, French-speaking of Cambodia, although he proclaimed to be an anti-communist, in actuality, he was supporting the communist forces, allowing them to use his waterport at Kampong Som, and allowing them to run their trail and supplies down here into the sanctuaries without being hindered. In public, he said he was an anti-communist. In reality, he was a pro-communist supporter. However, in March of 1970, he made a mistake. He left town, and he went to Paris. While he was away in Paris, General Ron Dandeneau took over the country. He and other anti-communist supporters took over and told Prince Sihanouk he could not return. First of all, they stopped all communist ships from coming in Kampong Som, and they took all of the trucks that were heading into the sanctuary areas and took the ammunition and supplies and just took it away from the communist folks. They were able to do that because these were just truck drivers. There were no troops. He then gave the North Vietnamese 72 hours to get out of the country of Cambodia. That was a different story. He did not have the troops of the caliber to take those troops on. So needless to say, they not only did not leave, they started taking over some areas in the northeast and northern parts of Cambodia. One in particular, the city of Kampong Som, they had surrounded and was under siege. That's when Long Nol asked President Nixon for some help. President Nixon, wanting to help an anti-communist regime, did send army troops into Cambodia along with Vietnamese troops in April of 1970. Under his executive authority to put troops into a foreign country for 60 days. After the 60 days were up in June, he knew better than to come and ask Congress for permission to keep the troops in Cambodia. As you know, the Vietnam War was not a very popular war whatsoever. And had he gone to Congress, he knew he would not get permission. It would be viewed as an escalation of the war in Vietnam. But then he reasoned the restriction is on putting troops in Cambodia. It doesn't say anything about troops 1,000 feet above Cambodia. So that is when the Rustic organization was formed. I was sitting at my desk in transportation and got a phone call from the personnel office saying, "Would you please come down and talk to us? We have something we want to talk to you about." Didn't seem strange to me. They did it all the time. They were responsible for moving all the personnel out of Tan Son Nhut, so they often had classified moves and what have you. So they would call us down to discuss upcoming movements, make reservations and space on the aircraft. However, this time, when I walked in, the gentleman said, "Would you step into the back room?" Okay. And he said, "Do you still speak French?" Yes, I do. And I gave him an example. A couple of weeks before, a French nun had been on the base at the Civil Actions Office, and they couldn't understand what she wanted, so they called me over and said, "Same question, do you still speak French?" I said, "Yes, I do." And they wanted me to find out what this nun wanted. And what it was is, in French, she told me that USAID had given her a Jeep and some rice, and that she had permission, and she did. She had the documentation to ship it up north to a leper colony that her nuns operated. I said, "Well, that doesn't seem like a very tough thing to do," so I explained that in English to our folks, and that she was still tugging at my arm, and I said, "What is it, sister?" She said, "But I want to go with it." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I want to ride in the Jeep while you fly it up there." Okay, we won't start out by saying you can't do that. I'll ask why. Why, sister? And she said, they had been given another Jeep a few months earlier and some rice, and they shipped it up on one of our military ships and never got there. So she wanted to ride in the Jeep to make sure. So I explained to her I couldn't do that, but that we could do it signature service. Every person who touched the Jeep had to sign for it, and that seemed to satisfy her. But she wouldn't let me have the Jeep till the day it was going to fly. She kept it down at her orphanage, and on the day it was due to leave, I went down there, and she and I drove the Jeep onto the base, and she watched the gentleman sign for it, and called me every 30 minutes after that until the Jeep arrived and was turned over to one of her nuns. So yes, I had been speaking to her. He then asked me if I would volunteer for a special duty, top secret assignment. He says, I need for you to volunteer, but I can't tell you what you're going to do. And he said, well, we need for you to speak French and you'll be flying combat missions. So I thought about it, had a wife and 3 children at the house, but everything, all the letters and everything were very positive, that was going well. I thought about my dad from during the Second World War, had 3 children, was married, was overage, did not have to go anywhere, but yet gave up his job and went to work in the shipyards just so he could contribute. And I said, well, I guess it's my turn. So I signed on the dot. So they sent me to another office on the base, 7th Air Force headquarters was on Tung Sanut Air Base, and they told me to report to this other officer who was in charge of operations. When I got over there, again, he takes me to the back room, and he says, what I'd like you to do, Sergeant Dandeneau, he says, would you go talk to those 2 gentlemen over there? 2 Asian-looking gentlemen in a flight suit, and they were looking outside. It was a beautiful day. It was sunny. He said, just go over and see if you can talk to them. So I went over there, and we started talking about the nice day, beautiful sun out, you know, haven't had any rain for 2 days, and lasted about 2 minutes, and he pulled me out of there. And he said, okay, you'll do it. I said, yeah, that's fine. So he said, we'd like you to start tonight. Okay, 8 o'clock. Okay. I still don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to start at 8 o'clock tonight. So they had me report to this organization on the base at 8 o'clock that evening. And I said, well, I have to go back to my office and tell them that I'm not coming back. You know, I left this morning at 9 o'clock. I haven't been back. And they had told me this was going to be for 3 weeks. So that wasn't going to be too bad, 3 weeks temporary. So I said, no, you're not going back to your office. We want you to go back and get some sleep. Report at 8 o'clock tonight. You're going to fly tonight. And then tomorrow morning, report to the flight line again, and we're going to take you to where you're eventually going to be delivered. So at 8 o'clock, I reported to her. I had told to go. And lo and behold, it was an AC-119 gunship organization. So again, I walked in. It was my day for majors. I kept running into majors all day. And he says, Sarge, you ever flown one of these before? No. And I thought about the movie, The Graduate, you know, and him saying to Mrs. Robinson, be kind, please, it's my first time. And the major didn't listen to that. He said, okay, he says, if we make the takeoff, he says, that's the most critical part and everything will be all right.
That's why they call it $1.19. That's what the light was
$1.19. If we make the takeoff. So that's okay. So we did. We did make the takeoff, obviously. And we took off, and he started explaining to me how the radio worked, and he gave me an idea of where we were going. And this is where we were going. That town that I pointed out on the map earlier, the town of Kampong Thom, which was under siege, totally surrounded by North Vietnamese troops. Not Khmer Rouge, North Vietnamese troops. And my job was, as he explained it to me, to contact the Cambodian Army, National Army commander on the ground, and find out where he needed some assistance. And for that first evening, it happened to be a rice factory on the outskirts of town where the North Vietnamese were holed up. And I got as much information as I could because, ladies and gentlemen, I assure you, there was not one airstrike put in unless it was checked, double checked, triple checked, and then you might get permission. And this is where the translators came in. We had to get as much detail and as much information as possible so that a joint group of U.S. Air Force and Cambodian government officials would agree that that target was a valid target. So that was my first evening on the outskirts of Kampong Thom. Little did I know that I would be visiting Kampong Thom almost daily for the next 6 months. Kampong Thom remained under siege, and the commander, Colonel every day during daylight hours would push the North Vietnamese back. Every evening, the North Vietnamese would push his troops back into the temple. If you want to know more about that young man and the incidents at Pom Tom, U.S. News and World Report, August of 1970, published an article about him and the siege of Pom Tom. When I reported back to the airfield the following morning, they put us on the C-130 and flew us to Dandenong Air Base, Republic of Vietnam. This is where I was to remain for the next 6 months, and the Rustic operation was to remain until November 1971. When we first arrived, there was no room at the inn, and we slept wherever someone was on rest and recuperation leave, wherever somebody was on emergency leave, wherever there was an empty bed, that is where we slept. There was only 3 interpreters at the beginning. Staff Sergeant Joe Dufresne, Bob Buddha Paradise, and myself. There were also 4 Cambodian officers who could speak English, and they had come over and were flying backseat as translators with us. But because there were so few of us, we were flying every day. In one stint, I flew 10 days in a row. Because we were not officially air crew members, no flight pay, no restrictions. Whenever we had to fly, we could fly. There were no restrictions, no rest periods. Eventually, we did get quarters. And these are the quarters. These are the bachelor officer quarters at Benoit, Vietnam. We were sergeants and airmen. Many of you who have been in the Air Force know that that does not mix. However, the mission was so secret that they insisted that that be done, and that was the only way that we could operate without letting people know what we were doing. When we first moved into it, we were in the second building on the left. When we first moved into it, it was a former F-100 BOQ, that's for officer quarters, and there were a few of the F-100 pilots remaining. They had not left yet. They were waiting for their flight to go back to the next day. Nothing occurred the first afternoon or what have you, but they eventually figured out that about half of us were not officers, we were enlisted. That did not set well with them, and the building was divided in half with a bar, restaurant type area in the middle. And as was customary with units, they had television in there, food in there, drinks in there. And when they found out we were enlisted, they took it all out. They took it back to their room. They really did. They took it back to their room. So, the people of the officers that we flew knew how important it was for us to be together and how important the mission was. So at about 11 or 12 o'clock that night, I heard the most ungodly noise, took the noise out there to change, and opened my door, and there is one of our pilots going up and down the hallways in a moped, dragging the biggest chain I've ever seen that he got from the motor pool, up and down the hallway. And when these gentlemen from the F-100 organization stuck their head out the door, they advised them that it would continue until everything was put back. Ladies and gentlemen, it was put back. While we were at Benoit, we were assigned to the 19th Tactical Air Support Squadron. Our official designation, we like to go by the call sign Rustic. We call ourselves Rustic, but we really call the 3 DASC Task Force, 3rd Direct Air Support Center Task Force. Not Joint Task Force, as we have today. Task Force because it was totally 100% Air Force. I apologize for the quality of this picture, but this gentleman here is my boss, Lieutenant Colonel Jim Lester. Fine gentleman, excellent pilot every time he flew on got to fly with him. And he was Rustic 01. The gentleman next to him was one of the Cambodian officers that came to participate with us. The first day I arrived, he called me into the office and he says, Ron, he says, I'm a pilot. Been flying all my life. I know how to handle pilots. I had them work for me. He said, never had an enlisted people working for me before. How are we going to handle this? I said, well, how are you handling your pilots? He said, well, I got two different sections. I got an O2 section for the O2 aircraft, an OV-10 section for the OV-10 aircraft. I said, well, okay, how about you have a third section for the translators? I work for you, they work for me. He said, works for me, and that's how we set it up. That wasn't too much at the time, because there were only 3 of us. I only had 2 people working for me. But it eventually grew to 18 before I left. Fine gentleman, first commander of the Rustic. He is currently alive and well in Fort Walton Beach. And I will be seeing him in October when we have a reunion. We basically used 2 aircraft. The gunships were at Tonson Newton, that continued to operate. But the Rustics basically used 2 aircraft. This is the O2 aircraft. It's not a very good picture, but it's a push and pull aircraft. It has engine in the front, engine in the back. And it is not as fast as the OV-10 and does not have the range of the OV-10. But they performed the nighttime mission. Remember, we were doing 24-hour operations. We promised to help them 24 hours a day. So they did the night missions and the early morning mission. Regrettably, we had 3 people killed in action during those 3 years in Vietnam, and regrettably, the first 2 were gentlemen in the O2 aircraft. They were checking the highway first thing in the morning to get some intelligence information for us who would be flying later on in the day. They got caught in a crossfire. The OV-10 crashed, and unfortunately, neither one of them lived. The sad part is Lieutenant Eddie was the pilot. Lieutenant Lowers, I believe his name, was the co-pilot, and it was his first one. The main aircraft, the one that, the workhorse, the one that we flew the most, was the OV-10A. You can see here, it's manufactured by North American Rockwell. 2 engine room, and I were on a mission one day and we came back. Blazing rainstorm. We attempted to land the first time without success. We attempted to land the second time without success. And then I listened to him tell the tower, you either come in this time or you have lost in. And I'm sitting in the back. Thank you very much, Johnny Engel. But he did. Third time we checked in, we landed on the ground. It had been 5 hours. So I know it will fly 558. This is another view of it. Notice the flat wing. And we were observers, so we just used it as a forward aircraft. The Marine Corps used it as a fighter bomb. It would have wingtip to wingtip, so sheds, rockets, everything. When they went out there, they didn't need anybody to come in and bomb the target. They did it themselves. But we were using it as an observatory. And again, you'll notice it has 2 engines. Will the OV-10 fly on 1 engine? It did not have enough. I was flying with a Captain George Brower. Unfortunately, Captain George Brower was an older captain. He was an ex-enlisted man, then had become commissioned, so he was very mature and older pilot, a lot older than most of the captains that we had in the organization. And we were out flying over the area, and I was holding a conversation with the commander on the ground, trying to get some information. And he came over on the intercom and he said, Ron? Yes? He said, nothing to worry about, but I'm going to have to shut down the right engine. I said, excuse me? I'm not a regular flyer, I just do this radio thing. He says, yeah, we had metal in the engine. Oh, I said, okay. I said, what? He said, metal in the engine. I said, okay. So he said, but that's all right. He said, I've been trained to fly this airplane on 1 engine. My God, he had it. And he said, the only critical part will be when we get back. First of all, it'll take us longer to get back. And when we get back to base, when I make the landing, when I make the turn for the landing, that will be the critical point. And I'll let you know when we're doing it.
Let you know when the pucker.
Yeah, let the pucker up and back. So we did, took about twice the amount of time, took about 40 minutes to the normal 20. And when we came over Benoit, the airfield that I showed you earlier, I looked down and there were fire trucks, every fire truck everywhere was lined up. And he did, he got on the radio and said, okay, well, I'm going to make the turn now. And he did it as pretty as you please and landed it just like it had 5 engines. Smoothly landed it as we passed the fire trucks. So it will fly on one engine. Guaranteed. There's another shot of it. And this is what you saw in front of you for 6 hours. These are the instruments in the aircraft. Every translator is taught to fly the OV-10. 100%, everyone, airman, sergeant, master sergeant, is taught to fly the aircraft. It's not that the pilots were nice guys and were trying to give us some flight time. Okay? Although some of them might have done it. The OV-10 is an ejector seat type aircraft. The pilot in the front seat can eject himself, and if the person in the back is injured, can also eject the person in the back. Unfortunately, if the pilot is injured, the person in the back cannot eject the person from the front seat. You say, well, yeah, what's the chance of that happening? And the gentleman did. Shortly after I left, I forget the tech sergeant's name, he was out on a mission with one of the officers, and a bird came right through, smashed through, and knocked out the pilot in the front seat.
Me.
Oh. Tech sergeant flew the airplane back to Benoit. Fortunately, the officer regained consciousness just before landing. But the sergeant could have landed, I guarantee you. All taught how to land. And of course, landing was the most difficult part. Takeoff and flying was simple. It's a real simple airplane. This is what it looks like when you're up in that airplane. This is a shot from the OV-10. This is the countryside that we're flying over. Another shot. Countryside was packed with holes. If you hadn't known better, you'd have thought every Vietnamese owned a swimming pool. But unfortunately, it was former airstrike. They were round and they did look like 1,500 people. Until you got over to Cambodia and started working, it was a pretty nice ride. One lieutenant in particular, he would take off, especially if it was a Saturday or Sunday morning on the weekend, and he would take the plane to the end of the runway, and he'd already stopped, and he had a cup of coffee and Sunday paper or Saturday paper, whatever it was, and he'd say, okay, Ron, take me to the war. And 20 minutes later, I'd say, okay, we're there. He's up in the front, and he's got his feet up on the dashboard. Quite the character. But when it came time to do business, they knew this. All hand selected. Every one of those pilots was handpicked. Every single one. It's not a very good shot, but I wanted to show you some of the airplanes that did put the airstrike in. All we did was get the information from the ground commander, get permission to put the airstrike in, mark the target, and then the various aircraft came in and knocked out the target. This is an F4, Air Force F4, I'm sorry, another better picture. This is a Vietnamese F5. Excellent pilots. Loved it when they had the job. They knocked out the target. This was my favorite. Looks like a toy airplane, doesn't it? 837. Pilots who flew that airplane had no fear. It was not unusual for them to come back with tree limbs hanging off of the wings. These people would not give up. They would get the target no matter what. And I mean, they literally got down in the trees and knocked out whatever target you needed. Even though it was a smaller airplane, looked like a toy, that was the one you'd want if you needed to knock out a target. Okay, this is the central area of Cambodia where we spent most of our time. I got to tell you about the tunnel in a second. When we first started flying, you notice the Krung Thom was up here.
and Tonley Sap, that's a big lake. So seemed like an ideal place to bail out. If we got into trouble, that should be the place where we would go. It's close. You know, we're flying most of the time out here. It's close. Big old lake. We'll jump out there and wait till they come and get you. Until we found out that everybody around the lake made a living selling alligator skins. That's where the alligators came from. We changed. We picked a new one. Okay. Tom Cook. 23rd of November, 1970. Major Don Brooks, Staff Sergeant Gil Belford, were hit by the city from 50 caliber. Major Brooks tried to bring the aircraft back. However, the hit had created a fire in the back of the aircraft. In the compartment, which is normally the cargo compartment where we kept our radios. And the fire got to be too much, so the backseater, Sergeant Belford, in the back, the fire kept coming up against the back of his head. So Major Brooks flew over the field and had him ejected. Staff Sergeant Belford ejected and landed in the field safely. And from what he told me later, ran for the woods and waited for the attack. Major Brooks fully intended to bring the aircraft. He was going to try to fly it back. However, the minute that Belford went through the canopy, the draft now brought the fire up to the front of the aircraft where he was, and he quickly realized that he had to bail out. He had to do it quite suddenly, so he was ejected out and landed right through a thatch roof on a little hut in the field in Cambodia. Major Don Brooks was the center of the Air Force football, Air Force Academy football. He was not a little man. When I say Don Brooks came through, it was Don Brooks came through. So when we asked him what happened, he says, a parachute gun hung up and I'm hanging. And he said, there was a man in there, a gentleman, he was milking his cow. He said, what did you do? He said, I unbuckled my chute, a little too far from the ground. Came to attention, bowed to him, and said, good morning, and I'm very sorry. Asked him, what did he do? He bowed back. And then he went on and kept milking the cow, and Major Brooks went out. Major Brooks was a fine man. He also realized that we backseaters had not had any survival training. So he knew that Sergeant Belford was out there on his own with only the little on-the-job training we received about how to survive. The rescue helicopter reached him first, and he would not get on the helicopter, not allow himself to be saved until he got word that Sergeant Belford was safely on his helicopter. I have a lot of respect. So, who was next to go? Lieutenant Newberg and Sergeant Dandeneau were scheduled to replace Sergeant Belford and Major Don Brooks. So what they did is they diverted us to help with their rescue and recovery. Instead, they scrambled a Lieutenant Seibel and a backseater by the name of Purely Gandhi, who went to Tangkuk to take over the job that Major Brooks and Belford did, where they were promptly shot at and hit. It was not a good day. So, fortunately, though, they did not catch on fire, and they were able to maneuver the aircraft and bring them safely back to Ben 1. While we were working the rescue and recovery of the pilot and the backseater, they had also sent one of those AC-119 gunships to fly cover over the area while we were getting them out of it. The 119 got hit. And we stayed with them and talked to the ground commanders and the regional commanders and set up possible places where they would have to land. And we got them safely. So we called the 23rd of November 1970 the day of the 9 level guns. For you people in the military, you know that enlisted people start out at level 1, level 3, level 5, level 7, and then 9 levels. They had their 9 levels operating at 50 Cadillac there. Good news, everybody's safe and sound alive and well today. Okay. Too many instruments. Never was very good at mechanical things, huh, Colonel? This is Phnom Penh, the Royal Palace. As I told you earlier, no troops on the ground. This is an area for you. And this is the airport in Phnom Penh. Well, even though we did not want to go on the ground in Cambodia, we did not want to be seen on the ground in Cambodia, we didn't want to violate the law, fate sometimes decided it was going to do something different. So one day, Mike Wilson and I were flying back home. We finished our mission and ran into a squall. He tried to go over it. He tried to go under it. Nothing doing. Could not get through. Frantic phone calls back. And of course, they kept saying, keep trying, keep trying, keep trying. No troops on the ground. After what seemed like many, many hours, we finally realized we were not going to be able to get through. We were running out of fuel, for one thing, and it was better to save the airplane, the two of us, than just to be stubborn about the weather. So we did land at Phnom Penh. They turned the airport lights on so we could land. Quickly shut them off. Rustled us off to the hotel. It's on the pictures I'm passing around. And we were told by the embassy, no later than 0900 you will be out of here. Yes, sir. I'm not.
Ron, there was a limitation on 85 military people on the ground in Cambodia at that time. If I needed to go in there, a military guy from the embassy had to come out of country.
One has
a swap on a little
we're no time to swap. Well, yeah, 30 minutes. 30 minutes of fuel left. No time to swap. Thank you. And you'll notice that one of the pictures we took in front of the Royal Palace. And the important thing I wish you would note about the pictures I'm circulating around are the pictures of the MiGs. The MiG-17s parked here. You should ask, if they've got all these airplanes, why are you guys flying over there running airstrikes for the Cambodians? They had a lot of beautiful static displays, ladies and gentlemen. Those of you who work in logistics, if you don't have logistics, that multi-million-dollar airplane quickly becomes a static display. Very expensive static display. But what happened is that when they threw the communists out, their supply of spare and repair parts dried up. The aircraft were inoperable. So those first 4 Cambodian translators that we had flying with us were actually pilots who had been flying Cambodian aircraft for the wing. The only 2 they had left operational are the 2 that are in the pictures there, which is a French frigate Rustic and a Horizon, which is like a Piper Cub, and that's all they had that was working. Okay, I'm going up. Talking more than that. Although we were responsible for defending large cities like Phnom Penh, this is predominantly the type of cities that we ended up working with, the little small villages in the countryside. This is what it looks like, ladies and gentlemen, during rainy season. Try to find a target in that stuff. All water. Besides helping the commanders, we also had convoy escort duty. This is how they got stuff in and out of Phnom Penh and up to Hong Kong. And this is a water convoy. We also escorted truck convoy. And this is our Willie Peak. This is the rocket that we use to mark the target. And